Well, so much in the news lately about relay running, with Olympic qualification taking place at the World Relays in the Bahamas earlier this month. The Bahamas, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago all qualified teams to Paris. And so we want to ensure that you know what to look out for when our Caribbean teams go out to compete. Are they passing and receiving the baton properly? Yes. Are they receiving it properly? When things go wrong, we want to help you identify why, and so we brought in an expert, David Riley. He's the president of the Jamaica Track and Field Coaches Association, deputy chairman of the J3A's Competitions Commission, and most importantly, he recently coached Excelsior High School to the boys' 4x100 meters Championship of America title at the Penn Relays. David, welcome to our studio here.
Thank you.
It's been a minute.
It's my first time in the studio.
Ah, well, it's been more than a minute. It's the first
so I should
time.
get a prize.
You probably talk to Leighton afterwards.
What you should get a prize for is Excelsior winning their first 4x1 at Penn for 67 years, I think it was.
I haven't been keeping count.
Really?
It's been a while.
It's been a long while.
Yeah, I leave that to the other people.
You see him?
Yeah. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic work, huh?
So the fundamentals, the basics, I'm going to give you this because this feels so alien in my hand. But talk to me in terms of the fundamentals of relay running.
Right, well, what you just did is called a visual pass, and that's one of the options for passing the baton. And that's usually done in like a 4x4 or a 4x2 for teams 4x8. What we tend to see in the 4x1, which is much faster, is a non-visual pass, where the receiving runner actually does not see the baton before they receive it. So there's a lot of skill that is involved in passing the baton, the timing, and all of those things, which must actually be practiced in order for it to be efficient. So there's nothing wrong with, developing the skill of passing the baton. Most relays start and end with the baton being passed, just like how most airplanes take off and land without any accidents. But you have to actually practice it. So teams who practice the same thing and repeat it, result in the skill being mastered, and that's the important thing. You can master the skill.
Let me ask you this, because one of the things, sometimes when I try to explain to people that one of the keys to relay passing, of course, the no-look pass, is the idea that the baton does not slow down. That concept is hard for a lot of people to comprehend. You want to break that down for us as to why it's important for the baton not to slow down?
Because the relay is actually about how fast can you take the baton around the track. The most important thing in a relay is the speed of the baton. So if you slow the baton down through the exchange, the relay would have been slower than if you were to allow for the speed of the baton to continue. So it's very interesting sometimes the approach that coaches will take to the pass of the baton. They might think that, okay, we'll rely solely on the speed of our 4 runners and ignore the precision and the accuracy and the speed at which we pass the baton. And that, of course, that team will be an underperforming team. Yes, you might very well win, but your chances are greater if you pass the baton much faster.
Have you seen a perfect baton race in the 4x1s?
I wouldn't say perfect, but I've seen exchanges where it is evident that the baton has not lost any speed, and that is the objective.
You know, I'm always interested in looking at how the exchange is made. I just want to have that demonstration now, because is it that you try to eat up a stride in the passing of the baton? So I can understand the incoming runner having to slow down and not crash into the outgoing runner. But does that either slow or speed up the exchanging of the baton?
Well, the thing is, if I'm this close to you and I'm passing the baton, then this is slower than if I'm further from you and passing the baton. So the extension of your arm
is like a stride or two.
Yeah, the extension of your arm in passing, fully extended elbow, and receiving, fully extended elbow, is a faster exchange than if we're closer together, which means that both or one of the two athletes have a bent elbow. So that's another.
I don't remember Usain Bolt right on top of a Safa Powell in 2008 telling him to run.
Right.
And you're saying that it wasn't even the most effective way of passing it.
Right, but face it though, passing the baton at high speed is very difficult. It's a difficult skill and should be practiced. And so when you see athletes are running 9.5s, passing baton, there's a split second in something going wrong. So a lot of times the coaches may take a very conservative approach to passing the baton. And that usually is for teams that don't get a chance to practice often, the exchanges between those individuals. But if you have a squad where you can practice regularly, some of the bigger nations who have a lot more focus on the relays would have their relay camps and make sure that they get to practice. And that's because they understand that mastery of the skill comes from practice.
A couple of things I wanted to ask you. There are a couple of methods that teams use. I think the Chinese use the upsweep.
Yeah.
And there's a push pass, of course.
Which is what we do.
Yeah, which is probably the most effective, you think, in your mind, given Jamaica's success of the relays.
I think for me as a coach, I'm more comfortable with the repeatability of the push pass. I mean, we can tell you exactly where to place your hand.
Yeah.
So I want you to be shoulder height, and you know where your shoulder is.
Yeah.
So you can consistently keep putting the hand at the right height, and then
So you
the
go like
receiving athlete, the incoming athlete can regularly predict where the hand is going to come because you're looking at that box where you're expecting the hand. So you can get much faster passes, much more repeatable passes from that. The upswing is a little interesting. And maybe a lot more conservative for some teams where they're receiving the baton here, low. So it's in the arm swing. So this is the arm swinging, and you come back, you receive the baton. Yeah, it might seem interesting, but it's still a little closer in terms of where the athlete is.
For the purpose of the viewers?
Right. So you're coming here. This is a little closer. I have to come a little closer to you than if you fully extend the arm and I'm pushing and passing.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm more comfortable.
Which one is harder? Which one is harder?
The push pass, I think, gives you a lot more room to pass a baton earlier than the upswing, where you have to be closer to the individual in order to make that pass.
Second question I wanted to ask is, sometimes you see guys with two markers before the exchange box.
Yeah.
Explain what those two markers are.
Well, really, you're allowed one. I don't know why they allow two sometimes, depending on, you're allowed one tape mark. And a matter of fact, the rules tell you how long it should be, and it can't be on the line. But you're allowed one. Sometimes what they're doing is giving a range for which the athlete must reach before they move off. So instead of the tape mark, which might not necessarily be exactly where the stride is, you give a range, a box, and then the individual steps in that box, and then you move. So that's probably what they're trying to accomplish. I don't use that method.
Really?
No, I don't.
All right, so because
you're only allowed one piece of tape.
I know, but let me tell you what I used to be at high school, and I wasn't, of course, as proficient as you get, but I think we had a pretty decent relay team. We became FIFA champs in '81. Anyway.
Oh, I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah,
anyway.
whatever. so we had, like, what I do, I had Paul Melville giving me the stick. I ran the backstretch, and I was against this guy called Mingos from Camperdown, who was a lane too, ridiculously fast. So what I had a marker, one marker for when Melville hit that mark.
Right.
And other markers where I would stand before he gets to the box, where I would take off once he hits that mark.
Right.
That allowed me to get the stick about mid-box, because by the time I got to full speed, Melville would reach me and the stick would pass through. So that's how we used to work it. So
yeah, it's a little bit easier now because they've changed the rules, and so there's no acceleration zone where you can get disqualified for receiving the baton too early. Haven't seen a lot of coaches play with that. We're still doing the same thing. So no, you can't get disqualified for receiving the baton too early. You now have a longer zone for which you can receive the baton, but very few coaches actually exchange the baton at the top of the zone.
too close to the edge.
Too close to the edge, and I guess persons aren't very comfortable with living on the edge.
It's interesting because you'd want to. The idea is to give your fastest runner the longest stretch, or give them more room to build up speed or whatever. Wouldn't that be the thinking of collecting the baton earlier?
Yeah, no. Well, the thing is, if you want the baton to be passed when Leighton, the outgoing runner, is at his max, and David, the incoming runner, is also at his max. The problem is that when the exchange is about to be made, the incoming runner is actually getting slower and slower, because that's at the end of 100 meters, and that's when you start to decelerate. So you have someone who's coming in that's decelerating, and somebody who's going out that's accelerating. At some point, I might leave you. So where that takes place is a little tricky, and some experimentation is needed to get it perfect. And as I said, if you get the chance to practice together all the time, you can work that out and be very efficient.
Does it matter the hand? Because I'm not left-handed, right? so I can't imagine collecting a baton with my left hand. I think it's going to drop automatically. But does it matter? Do you encourage your right-handers to collect with the right hand and give it up with your right hand? And what happens when it's an exchange between someone who's right-handed and left-handed?
Well, the thing is, you know, we want athletes to have the skill of passing and receiving the baton, and regardless of which hand. But technically, the lead-off runner on the first leg would carry the baton in their right hand. So they're passing right hand to left hand. So the second runner would be receiving the baton in the left hand, and just how it is. So the baton travels in the middle of the lane, going between right and left-handed, depending on where.
And that comes down to the position in the lane as well,
right,
to allow you for the ease of transfer.
Right, so the person running the lead-off leg would run on the inside of the lane. The second leg would run on the outside of the lane. The third leg would run on the inside of the lane, and the ankle leg would run on the outside of the lane.
And what happens when athletes change hands in terms of their own from left to right or right? Because we saw both does it a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people do it because it's more comfortable for some to run with the baton in the right hand as a right-hander. And, you know, if you do that on the second leg, you have to stop to switch it back to the other hand, which it's a waste of time.
I wanted to ask you something, and this is a question I think it should be challenging, because here's the thing.
For David, no.
No, man.
No.
Over the years, we've seen good runners become extraordinary runners on relay legs.
Yes.
Why is that? David Clark, for example, is a fantastic example of when he used to run for Jamaica, the 4x4. Yeah. He would become Superman when you put a stick. Yeah, with a stick in his hand. Why is that?
I guess it's the energy of the baton. Some people just think that, you know, the relay is so much of an exciting event with so much drive and so on, so they put a lot more effort in it. And most athletes will give a better relay leg than they would a flat event leg.
Okay, you're off from a running start.
Yeah, you're running start, and just the energy for the relay, you usually get a good leg. So, yeah, I mean, we've seen that happen quite a bit. Athletes just get transformed because it's a relay.
How often do you recommend that, especially 4x1 teams, practice to get an efficient relay run?
As often as you can, but I prefer to actually make sure athletes understand the roles of the different, you know, your roles and responsibilities. If we start from there and we understand it and communicate it, then we'll be able to get it done even in very few sessions. So if you understand your role as an outgoing athlete and your role as an incoming, then it's a lot easier to make the passes. What are your responsibilities? What actions should you take? And so on. So if you find, you're receiving the baton, you can't do anything about the baton. So don't look around. If you look around, you're going to move the hand. Just stay there. I don't care how long it feels like. Just stay there. Your responsibility is to give me a flat, clear, level hand, and I'll do the rest.
And so stick.
Exactly. So
you know, I prefer the exchanges with the 4x4. So this is fairly simple.
Make sure you run all 400 meters, though.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that. I will ignore the last line. Leighton, it's been fun, as per usual.
It's been fun.
Hosting Le Baton with you. There you go. You can, ooh.
Yeah,
you okay?
Yeah, but I'm good.
Okay, we got to go. The time is up. We got to go. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Le Baton. Join us next week, same time, same place. Who's going to be my co-host next week? Who knows? We have no idea, but you can stay tuned and watch that. Another exciting show awaits next week. On behalf of the hardworking production too, we're saying goodbye from our studio here in Kingston, Jamaica.